Let's get a little fantasy focus in here. Do a little fantasy focus, hot and cold starts. I do want to acknowledge two things before we start, and I may have mentioned this in a tweet. Darcy Kemper, I'm not worried. It's day to day. He did just get lit up like a Rockefeller Center Christmas tree against Ottawa the other night and still managed to win somehow. And it's a Riddick Copley duo for now. But there will be a meltdown because of the amount of shares I have in him if he gets hurt long term. So just be ready for that. That's coming.
For me too, it's crazy that Jake Allen is the better goalie at this moment in time in New Jersey.
First guy to beat 33 teams in the NHL or something like that. There you go.
Jake Allen has to play 40 games so that I think that conditional pick becomes either a second. So we're big fans still here in Montreal of Jake Allen. We need him to play a lot. No excuses for the Devils, right? We have already established that. But I would like Jake Allen to play more. Also, it's not a question of if Darcy Kemper gets hurt. It's a question of when, because that's usually how it goes with him. I've limited my exposure to him. I think I have him in one league, and that's more than enough for me. But it's just a question of if. It's a question of when, not a question of if with Kemper. You know he's going to fall apart. He's basically a Land Rover. You know it's going to fall apart. You just hope you get rid of it before it does.
Exactly. Maybe I'm hoping we could get one more season out of this guy. That's all I want. I don't have him in any keeper leagues. I just have him in redraft leagues. I'm not panicking yet, is what I'm saying, even though it sounds like it. Anyway, also, I'm not putting Connor McDavid's slow start on this list. Come on now. We're not going to talk about. We're not worried about Connor McDavid's production. So,
don't we remember Edmonton got off to the absolute worst start and then had the absolute best middle half of a season, and then are all the way to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup? Yeah. We're not worried about Connor McDavid.
He's just giving the rest of the league a head start so that he can then, once he puts up 135 points, people will be like, well, I mean, he had a terrible start and look at him. So it's very nice of Connor to let the rest of the peasants in the league get a couple of points before he just goes on a 20-point heater in 6 games.
It'll happen. It's coming. So let's talk about, we got 6 players lined up that we're actually going to talk about here. First up, we talked about him earlier in the show. Evgeny Malkin, 2 goals and 9 assists, 4 power play goals to open the season here for Pittsburgh. Are we thinking this is production that can, and obviously not at this clip, but are we thinking that Malkin is, and my philosophy is if he's healthy, he produces. He might have his lows here and there, but as long as he's on the ice, he's going to be putting goals in the net. He's not a guy I'm going out and targeting in fantasy right now, but he's a guy I'm looking at that if I can maybe get in a throw in, or maybe if I get him on the cheap or something, you could do worse than him. And he's fixed into that Pittsburgh top 6.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think his production when he's on the ice is right there. But Darcy Kemper, it's is he going to get hurt? Is he going to stay healthy? That's the thing with Malkin. So if he could stay healthy, I agree, just like you, that I think that his production is going to be good enough.
I mean, you should probably just pencil him in to miss 20 some odd games. It's just what Malkin is right now. He, and it's through no fault of his own. He's getting a little bit older. He's still a big boy. He still throws his weight around, not as much as Ovi, but it's one of those things that if you can, if he gives you 60 points in 60 games, you got a point per game player. That is what it is. That's probably where his ceiling is. So can he maintain it? Sure, but just be aware that he's going to get hurt. So if anything, if you own him in a fantasy league, I would try to cash in on that check now. I would try to see if I can bump that up to somebody else and say, hey, let's maybe trade Malkin for somebody who's struggling off the start. See if you can kind of get some value for there, because like I said, he's going to get hurt. It's just you're hoping it's later rather than earlier. Or if it is later, you're hoping it's not something that lingers into your fantasy hockey playoffs, because that's probably the worst time for him to get hurt. So it's a good start, but I would look to cash in.
Now, we talk about his health. The last 2 seasons, he did make it through all 82 games, 27 and 40 last year, 27 and 56 the year before that. So maybe a little bit of decline if you're trying to say nah, that's the argument to sell for him, sell high. I think, maybe something's going to happen with Pittsburgh this year. I don't know. They just, they've got the vibe I thought they might have had last year. Maybe they're going to develop that this year, but we'll see. So that's Evgeny Malkin. Let's stay in the Keystone State. Let's go to the other side. Matvei Mishkov right now. He's got 2 goals and 1 assist to open the season. Both of those power play goals. We've already heard John Tortorella say he's not a savior. We can't, let's not put that much pressure on the kid, but there's not a ton of sources of offense on the Flyers. And if Mishkov can really be that go-to guy, and yes, like he's going to have his growing pains, teams are going to key in on him at some point, and he's going to have to fight through that. But I don't know. He looks pretty energetic to start the season.
Yeah, I was so upset I didn't get him during the draft this year, especially after kind of getting him throughout the whole mock drafts that we did. But he will go as far as John Tortorella will let him go. That's basically how I feel. He's got the talent. He came from KHL, right? So that's like, that's a top league there. And I think he's got the talent to play here. It's just, what we're dealing with John Tortorella and how he handles his players. He already downgraded it with that comment you made, making him not sound like, it's not much, but we'll see what he could do. Already 2 goals and 1 assist. That's a good start for him and whoever has him on his fantasy team or their fantasy team.
I think he can definitely produce, right? Like some people were worried that he wasn't going to be able in the NHL, but like you said, he played in the KHL. The KHL is a professional men's hockey league. Like there are men there. He's not playing against boys. He's not playing against kids. He's playing against grown men. So, he's come to the NHL. He's looked good. He's been implicated. He doesn't look like he's out of space here kind of thing. He deserves to be there. But again, if like the league will catch up to him at some point, right? And then he's going to go through his growing pains because he's a rookie, and that's just how this league works, right? The NHL is the best league in the world for a reason. People are going to start keying in on him, and once it starts to get difficult, that's when you're going to see if he can overcome it, if he can still play well. If he still plays well and he's responsible in his own zone and he does all the things that John Tortorella likes, then maybe it doesn't hurt him as much. But if he starts getting into the doghouse, if he starts to end up being a healthy scratch, play like 10 minutes a night, then it's going to be tough. So for Michkov, it's consistency here. He's got to be consistent, whether the points come or not, right? They'll be there. If you work hard, they'll come. But he can't get away from what's making him successful to start the year, because if not, like once you're in Tortorella's doghouse, it's extremely hard to get out of.
You can get out of it. It just it takes a lot more work to get out of it than it took to get into the doghouse. And here's the other thing with Mishkov: when they do start keying in on that line a little more with Frost and Tippett, he's on that top power play unit, so he's gonna, even if he can't eat at even strength for a little while, he'll get his opportunities and capitalize somewhat on the power play there. So good upside with Mishkov. Now, guy's gotten off to a little bit of a cold start here. Mr. Carter Verhaeghe, only 1 assist on the season so far. When I was looking at his game log from last year, because the level of production he provides, he had a couple of stretches where he went 2 games without a point and 1 stretch where he went 3 games without a point. But other than that, he pretty much produced consistently and had at least a point per game throughout. So, Florida's only a few games into the season. If this starts to become more of a extended slump, then I'll worry. But, another game or 2 for me, jury's still out, because he's the type of guy that he'll just start putting it in the net soon and start producing.
I actually felt like this Florida team would kind of start off slow this season, considering that they went to back-to-back Stanley Cups and the toll that just takes on your body as a player. I have no doubt that he'll play up to his expectations. I think it's just a slow start for me.
He's a great buy low candidate, right? I mean, he's a very consistent hockey player. We know that. And like Matthew Tkachuk has been out here due to illness. That's obviously not great. Alexander Barkov with the injury, that's also not great. So like there's some significant pieces missing in Florida, and that just means that teams don't have to respect the others that are around him. No offense to the other guys skating there, but nobody is Matthew Tkachuk or Alexander Barkov. So I think once those guys get back into the lineup, Barkov is an elite passer. He moves the puck around. Verhaeghe plays with him on a line. The same thing for the power play. You get good movement from those guys. So it might take a little bit, but I'm not worried about Carter Verhaeghe. I don't think that would be fair. If anything, like I said, I'm trying to buy low on him. I'm trying to see if someone started to panic, and I'll gladly take him at a discount.
If you did want something to worry about in Florida, it's their depth, which is already pretty exposed right now. So that's going to be an interesting thing to follow as the season goes on. So there's Carter Verhaeghe. We got a couple more players to go before we get to the Colorado Avalanche. First up, we'll talk about a former Panther here, Jonathan Huberdeau. Jonathan Huberdeau right now out of the gate, 3 goals and 3 assists. But the first thing that jumps out at me is he's shooting at 50% right now. That is not going to be maintained. That being said, he's never going to go back to being a 30-80 guy like he was a few years ago with Florida. Can he be like for him, it would be a good season, a 25-40 guy? Can he get back to that level? I think so, maybe.
I forget what his point total was to start the season. I know I took the over on it. I talked about this, and obviously he's not going to shoot 50% because it's Jonathan Huberdeau. He's going to regress quite a bit, and that's from a goal scoring standpoint, and that is fine. He's also playing on the third line, which is like, it's okay. Maybe that's sheltering him a little bit, but that's not where I want him to be. He is an elite passer, and that won't change. So as long as the guys around him stay healthy and can find the back of the net, I think Jonathan Huberdeau is going to be just okay. I expect him to pump anywhere over 50 assists. I think his over under was like 55 and a half, 56 and a half points. And I think he can easily be a 50 plus assist guy. The problem is it's the Calgary Flames, right? And I get that they're off to a good start, and that's all handy dandy and unicorns and butterflies, but like, that's a facade, right? Let's not pretend that the Calgary Flames are legitimate here. They should not be the best team in Alberta. So they will regress, as they should, and Jonathan Huberdeau's shooting percentage will regress as well. But this is definitely a good start for him. Again, another great sell high candidate. If you can find somebody who's willing to buy some Jonathan Huberdeau, I would ship that out quite fast.
Yeah, I agree here. Look, his production dipped by half from his time in Florida to his move to Calgary. I was drinking the juice when that all started. Not anymore. I don't think that this is going to last throughout the whole entire season.
If you're in a league that values, in a category league where you can use some help with assists, then that's a guy to consider maybe. I mean, he's on the point on the first power play. But yeah, like I think he can be a 25-45 kind of guy. Like, that's where he's at right now. And obviously the Flames are going to cool off, but at this point, there's no pressure on him to produce because everybody already has put all that pressure on him and have been disappointed. So now we're in that, like, whatever you get out of him, you get out of him. So maybe he's playing a little looser and a little freer. That everybody's gotten over the fact that, okay, this is what Huberdeau is at this stage in his career. So we'll see there. Two more guys to go here. Let's stay in Western Canada. Elias Pettersson, 1 assist to start the season. This is a guy we talked about in mock drafts where none of us really crazy on him. And then we got some comments, on the YouTube's page that like, oh, he's better than you guys give him credit for, blah, blah, blah. I would buy low on him. I think, if you can get hands on him, I think Vancouver, he's there. I don't know. I just think he's a good buy low candidate right now. I don't think this is going to sustain. I think he's okay.
I would buy more on Pettersson than I would Huberdeau. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like you said, I think his production has been pretty consistent over the last couple of years. So, and he's going to get you points when it comes to who gets goals. He does well with assists. So I would buy in and I guess buy low.
There was a Canucks fan who left a comment under one of our videos telling me to get lost. And I assume he will be back here again because I just don't want any piece of Elias Pettersson. He's not like some guys want to take him as a top 10 pick. He's not. There's too much inconsistency in his game. When he is good, he is fantastic. But when he is not, it is like it's feast or famine with him. And we saw that last year towards the playoffs. It just wasn't working for him. And now he's off to a slow start. And, Vancouver went out and, they added Jake DeBrusk and they still got Brock Besser there and JT Miller and the power play is still there. So like he's getting all the opportunities. It's just not working. I don't want to invest the capital in what it would take to get him. I don't, especially on where you drafted him. You probably took him in the first 2 rounds. So you're not going to sell like a ton on him to start. And you probably shouldn't if you took him. It's kind of one of those things where you're almost handcuffed to him and you're like, hey, we got to ride this wave out. So I just want nothing to do with him. I don't want to go near him with his extremely long stick. I want to stay far away from him and let him figure it out because there's just too much inconsistency there. There are no shortage of fantasy hockey players I can get that are inconsistent that won't cost me what it would cost to acquire him via trade. So just go out there, skate circles. I don't know, figure it out. But right now, I would not be feeling good.
Reason why I'm optimistic on him is 89 points last year, 102 the year before that. And I get it, the feast or famine when, if you're in a week-long league, there are weeks where he'll win you a week by yourself, and there are weeks where he literally will contribute 0 points. He's been playing with Jake DeBrusk maybe a little bit. It's only 3 games in, maybe still developing chemistry there. And I know that people say preseason, but preseason is more about figuring out who's going to take those like bottom last couple of spots on your roster and messing around with line combos, but you don't really get a ton of time. It takes time once you get in the regular season. So I would be patient with Pedersen, but I see what you're saying too, Chris. Because he's streaky, sometimes you can't have those weeks where he's not giving you anything, even if he does balance it out by giving you a ton the following week or 2 weeks later.
89 points in 82 games, though, is not to me, it's not first round value player.
He's a second round guy
at best. And does he throw his weight around? No. Does he block shots? No. Does he take a ton of shots? No. So they're if he's not racking up points, what else is he doing? That's for me at least why I stayed far away from him in fantasy for obvious reasons. I think JT Miller is obviously the much better player, but Pedersen still, he's young, he still has an opportunity, he's got all that there, but fantasy hockey is today, at least for redraft leagues. So I'm not touching him. I will if he figures it out, great. Hate tweet me directly, but if he doesn't, don't be surprised why.
Let's be honest, you didn't pick him out of spite because this guy told you to get lost on the show. Come on.
I mean, look, man, Canuck fans are feeling good about themselves, as they should. This team barely got by the Nashville Predators, and they don't have Thatcher Demko, and they just kind of look mid to start the year. They kind of just look there. So,
well, they better play good. I got a lot invested in my first round pick in JT Miller and Brock Besser.
I'll see. The Canucks, I think they have a lot of reasons to not be off to. So we'll see what happens. When Demko does return at some point, and Dakota Joshua comes back and all that good stuff. So we've got one more player to go here before we talk a little Colorado Avalanche. Brant Clark, who is taking Drew Doughty's place on the Kings power play. Chris talked about guys that are sheltered before. They're certainly going to shelter him, but he's gotten off to a pretty good start this year. He's got 4 assists with 3 of them on the power play. So I think he's a guy that if you need a source of power play points and you got a spot for a defenseman that you could plug in, at least while Doughty's hurt, could certainly do a lot worse.
Well, he only played in 16 games last year, and he already has the same amount of assists that he did last year that he has now. So he's off to a good start. If he can score some goals, even better.
Yeah, obviously the loss of Drew Doughty is the catalyst here for Clark. He's getting all those opportunities, and nobody's going to challenge him for it. I can't think of another defenseman who's going to take his spot. So this is his spot, and I'm not really surprised that he's having success on the power play either. That's where he might get the majority of those minutes. It's easy to shelter players like that. He's got the offensive skill. He doesn't have to go out there and play top minutes against the opposing team's best players. Let guys like Gavrikov figure that out. Let the rest of the group, right, the Kopitars and everybody, the Denos, work on that. Let him get some easier matchups, control his ice time. He doesn't have to be playing 26 minutes a night. Just give him what he can handle to start. Let him, kind of like he is now, build up that confidence, feel like he belongs, feel like he's the guy who's quarterbacking it. And then as the season goes on, give him a little bit more, a little bit of responsibility, see how we do with it, a little bit more, see how it comes with it. But you should have been drafting Clark near the end of your drafts. So if he is on a waiver wire, you can pause the video if you're watching it later, go pick him up, and then resume, because you can't wait till the end of it.
We'll wait.
We'll wait. It's fine. Nobody's, we're not going here. Just press pause, go pick him up, right? Just grab him, hope he's there, and then continue on with your day. You come right back, you pick it up here, and you move on. He's not available, Answer. I'm pretty sure he's not available.
When people were talking about Lane Hudson as a defenseman to grab late in drafts, that was another guy that was right there too. And I'll say this: when Doughty comes back, if Clark keeps playing the way he's playing and producing at a similar rate, I don't know if you take him off that top power play unit. Yeah, maybe you shelter. Maybe he gets less even strength minutes. But I might keep him there and either have Doughty anchor the second power play unit, or maybe you go with 2 defensemen on the back end on the power play versus having Kevin Fiala back there on the other point. But if he keeps playing this way and he's expected to be that guy for the future, I wouldn't want to disrupt that.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not taking him off that top probably. Even when Doughty comes back, give him PP2 minutes. Let him. He's a good all-around defenseman now. He's not the same player he once was, but he can still defend. So let him do that. The transition is here. It's just let Clark spread his wings. Let the young guy take over.
And Drew Doughty not being a spring chicken, a couple of less minutes a night over the course of whatever time he's got left in the regular season, if and when he does return, that adds up for the playoffs, because the Kings are still expected, maybe a wild card team, but they're still expected to be in the mix. So there we go. That is 6 players, fantasy hot and cold starts. Be doing some sort of fantasy segment every week here on Total Hockey Now.